Ashley. She's an author, and we are really happy, and I hope you join me to welcome her today on this show. And how are you today, Ashley?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So how is COVID-19, wherever you are?
I'm sure as it is everywhere. I think the cases are actually rising where I am in Alabama, but I actually work for a research university, so I kind of get the inside scoop about the cases. And I feel like as long as we listen to the health professionals and just be patient with what they're telling us and adhere to their guidelines, that things will get back to normal a little faster.
So you are optimistic.
I am.
That's awesome. So could you tell us about you?
Yes, so as you said, I'm an author, but I'm also a PR professional for a university. I am releasing my second book called Autoscopy, which I'll talk more about in our broadcast. I have always loved to write since I was little. I guess the kickstart to it all was when I was in fifth grade, and my English teacher at that time told my mother she was basically saying, you know, your daughter has a really unique talent as far as writing. Like, you should send her to this fine art school. And she was just really excited about it. And it made me more passionate about it and have more confidence in it. And so ever since then, I've been writing narrative poetry and short stories. And I'm just really excited about all of that kind of coming to fruition with this second book.
That's awesome. And you have this book we're going to talk about. What's the title? And why that title?
It's called Autoscopy, and I guess it's a little more complicated than most titles, but it's actually just about an outer body experience. So I guess the best example that I can give, I was born in the 90s, and they had this show called Unsolved Mysteries, which was basically like a docuseries about crazy and unique cases from around the country. And one of the cases that stood out to me that kind of inspired the book, the angle I took on the book, I should say, is on Unsolved Mysteries. It was a case where a lady had a young son, but the young son could basically see stuff and knew stuff from like their great great grandfather, but they never met them, and their parent had never told them about it. So it's like they had this sixth sense, like they were having this outer body experience. And so that's what I wanted to kind of encapsulate in Autoscopy. And the protagonist, the lead character, basically is a young girl just like you and I that goes through different trials. She grows up in an abusive household. And in the midst of that, she gets this special innate ability to catapult back into time. And she winds up in the 1800s during the heat of slavery. So she has her adventures there and her coming of age. But then you also get to see her back in her own, what we would call present day. And different trials that are going on there as well.
Awesome. And you talk about before about poetry and different genre you try to work in. Which one is the one you like the most? Which one do you feel the most comfortable with?
Well, I like science fiction because it's something that I feel like a lot of people within our culture don't really tackle. And I actually have been doing some research on that, and there's a reason behind it that I'll speak about later. But I love writing poetry. That's really where I can fluidly get out my thoughts about relationships. I've written a lot of poems about relationships. I've written a poem in the past about someone that was on death row in a creative writing class that I was taking at the time. And they really pushed me to basically push the limits of the imagination. And I've had people do that for me. And so that's really one aspect that I want to do with my books. If you think of movies like The Matrix or like these big sci-fi movies, one thing that they teach the protagonist or the characters is that, hey, you have to push your imagination in order to live up to your true purpose, in order to be as strong. In that case, in order to fight, you have to basically realize the world isn't, there are no limitations to the world in order to be your best self. And so that's kind of what I am going for with Autoscopy.
And are you working on a project already, or is it something you're going to do in the future?
I am. So Autoscopy is actually up for pre-order as of last Friday on barnesandnoble.com. So you can pre-order it, and it'll actually start being disseminated on May 22nd, which is next Friday. So I'm super excited about that. On my channel, the Ashley N Media Show, I talked about that and I did like a release for it. So that's the biggest project that I'm working on right now. This is actually my second book. I have another book that I published in 2018 on Amazon called Taxes. And it was also, it wasn't as much sci-fi as action. This book kind of incorporates action, like historical reenactments, romance, and that science fiction. So I kind of expanded on what I did before with that book.
Awesome. So it's a continuity. So you really like that genre, that kind of book. Awesome. What would you advise a new author, somebody who's starting today, who want to become an author? What would you tell that someone? What advice?
I guess the greatest advice and kind of the theme of this book is to realize your purpose. There have been tons of times, and even now as I'm but working to market this book and sending out press releases and trying to talk to different bloggers. And I really appreciate you having me on your platform, by the way, because it's
You're welcome.
Good exposure as an author when you're up and coming. But I guess to the younger authors, I would say don't change for anybody. Like if it's a specific genre you like, don't listen to people that'll tell you, hey, well, this genre may sell more. And my husband is a big inspiration for that point because he's a self-taught oil painting artist. He actually designed the book cover for Autoscopy.
Which is nice. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And I've just seen the things that he's had to go through as far as selling. And he does a lot of African-American antique art as far as oil and charcoal drawings. So he basically brings to life these really vintage portraits. And people have told him, well, you'll sell more if you just do football portraits. Because Tuscaloosa, Alabama, they're a big football city. You'll sell more if you change this and that. And, I've just watched him basically stand his ground and, this is what I want to bring to the world. This is my purpose. And I feel like I would tell other young authors that just to stick to, what their purpose is and know that. And even if you're not always valued in that, just knowing that you living out your purpose is helping the world in some way.
That's awesome. That's a really great advice. And do you have a part of your book you would like to read for us?
I do. And kind of explain it so you'll understand. So the happens in the first chapter with her actually having one of her blackouts where she's catapulted back to the 1800s. And it's the very first one. So as you can understand, she's confused and a little bewildered and just trying to gain some understanding on her new surroundings. So that's the part that I'll be reading.
Okay. So I'm going to let you have all the stage for you, and I'm going to hide myself for a few minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'll begin reading now. The lady grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me toward one of the dwellings that resembled a small log cabin. She opened the door, stepping over 2 of 3 people who were sleeping soundly. The little boy looked to be about 8 or 9 years old. The others looked at least 30. One woman was lying on the floor. Suddenly, the woman woke up screaming with a frantic look in her eyes, scrambling to grab the next person beside her, and in turn, knocking over a glass that lies next to her on the floor. The room suddenly came alive as I was placed on a cot in the corner. Shadows from the candlelight flickered and danced on the walls. It was the only way I could see their faces. I concluded that I'd been kidnapped and was in a danger that I never imagined. But why did these people look so familiar, almost as though I'd seen them before? The older woman who herded me into the one-room cabin came to the screaming young woman and held her. It's okay, Benny, my sweet Benny, she said as she rubbed the woman's hair. It was just another nightmare. The woman, who was still visibly shaken, stuttered through her tears. It wasn't a dream. Her voice trailed off into the distance as she stared at the candlelight. I was reliving. I could see his eyes as we both hung there. I watched the life leave from his eyes, all the while feeling my baby, die inside me. If you hadn't come when you did, Mima. Her voice stopped. The woman began to raise her voice as she finished her tirade. Looking at her, she seemed defeated and alone, even with people surrounding her. The young boy scooted toward me and placed his head in my lap on the floor. His body was trembling from both waking up to such a racket and because the conversation was frightening him. Heck, it was frightening me. I had an urge to run from the building. This aria that they spoke about wasn't me. This wasn't my life. Then it hit me. Last Monday at school, we talked about bondage. We read about slavery. Slavery? I looked around the room. Everyone's clothes were ragged and torn. I saw dingy overalls on the little boy and long skirts and dresses with turbans and no shoes worn by the women. I mean, this was merely improbable. How could I be in my own city all alone one moment and then end up here? I had to get out of here, whatever trickery this was. Mima, as the young woman had called her, continued rubbing the woman's hair and rocking her. She just kept saying, "My sweet Benny," repeatedly as she rocked. Then the old woman began to hum, softly at first, but then it transitioned to singing. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Oh, sometimes I feel like I'm almost done, a long way from home. Although the lyrics were haunting, her voice was comforting, considering the chaos of it all. The little boy lying on me began to fall back asleep, and Benny's weeping stopped. It was a solemn moment, but all the more confusing for me. I picked up a piece of glass that shattered after Benny woke up violently earlier and looked at myself in the shatters. I was white, well, not quite white, but I seemed to be lighter in complexion, mixed maybe, with long curly hair that had been placed in a ball. I didn't recognize my face. I just knew none of this could be real. And that's the part that I'll read for you guys today.
Thank you. It's beautiful. And I like the description, like you are really on site. It's really great. You did a good job. So when is the book, it's going to be released? You said it's in a pre-order, but it's going to be released when?
On May 22nd, which is next Friday. So that's when they should start mailing out.
Okay. What I wanted to do, it's aside of the interview, I would like to invite you to my community where I have many authors. I have like around 6,000 of them. I'm going to send you the link and you could join also. So the day you have your release, you could make like an announcement and share it in my community. I really like what you're doing.
Okay, I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. So what's your input out of this, the political issue we are facing right now with the COVID-19, and based on your book, because it's kind of like having some kind of similarities. I said kind of twice, I know, but it's quite similar. So what's your input about that?
I guess, and the thing about one of the aspects that I really wanted to achieve with the book as well, of course, I want to create and inspire, but I want to diversify as well. And I'll talk a little about that and then connect it to the political element. But as far as diversification, so I was watching an interview from Erica Alexander from an old show called Living Single. She was Max on the show. I think her name was Max. She did an interview and she was saying that she had basically been creating all of these scripts for Hollywood and she was providing them to people. And they told her, they read the scripts and they told her, you know what, I mean, who is your audience going to be? Because this is like a lot of science fiction type stuff. And African Americans don't really see themselves in the future. And by that, I took from it her meaning, like with the COVID-19, how it's saying, you know, it's disproportionately affecting certain people, certain communities. And it really makes me think, you know, about that interview, because I guess to say, I'm trying to give like African Americans more hope than just focusing on the plethora of things that are really kind of stacked against us, or it would seemingly look that way now. Because if you're talking about poverty rates and you're talking about healthcare and things of that nature, and as far as the political aspect of it, I feel like with the COVID-19, I think I don't remember the exact numbers, but thousands of people, maybe 80,000 or so, are dead. And I feel like those people, I talk about this in one of my videos, I feel like those people have become just a number or a statistic. And I feel like we have to be very careful not to do that, because these are people, these are spouses and aunts and uncles and mothers, people that, you know, family members are not going to have around them anymore. And according to the percentages, a lot of those are African Americans. So I do want African Americans to see themselves in the future. I want them to see themselves having goals and being able to plan for the future, because they know that they can overcome these obstacles that we have.
Well said. And if somebody is like thinking, I'm just a statistics and I can't change my life, what would you tell that someone who's having that kind of self-destruction mindset?
I think that reflects on the protagonist in my novel too, because on one portion, she actually in present day tries to commit suicide. And I feel like the reason that people do get into that real depressed state is because they don't feel valued and they don't feel like they have a purpose for being here. Because once you figure out, what your purpose is and what you uniquely can share with the world, because I believe that we were all put here for a very unique purpose. So if you're taking yourself out of that, you're committing suicide, or you're not really living up to your potential, you're not only hurting yourself, but you're keeping something from the world that we may need. Like, how do we know those people can't be an inventor? Those people can't be a doctor that cures the coronavirus or some other pandemic that may happen in the future. So you never know what you're taking from the world when you're not really living up to your full potential.
Cool. So do you think there is something the politics or the community should do to help those in those situations where you feel like you are just a statistic?
I see working, like I said, for the research university, I see a lot of content come out about mental health. And of course, different places specifically for the employees have those mental health resources for them. But for the people that don't, I feel like something should be done, or for the people that maybe don't have access to that because of their finances. A lot of people are now unemployed. I feel like those people should have some type of way to get that mental health guidance and resources. I'm not sure particularly what's available online for them to do that. I know that we have technology that's far reaching in advance, and they have telemedicine now. So I'm sure there are resources to help. With my YouTube channel, I try to basically inspire people and really help with mental health. And I actually plan to talk about in my next video, covert depression, because I see a lot of that on social media where I feel like people are really crying out for, not, people will say they're crying out for attention, but it's really what I feel like is like hidden depression. And they're placing that through like these memes, and I don't mean like the funny memes that people write, but I see a lot of dating memes where I feel like women in general, once they get a certain age, they feel like they should be married, or they feel pressured to be married. And so they write these memes about, when am I going to get married? When am I going to do this? But I feel like everything happens for a unique purpose at the correct time. And if you rush it, you may run into something that you don't even want to deal with. So just dealing with different forms of that, dealing with, it's a lot of what I would call flashiness on social media, where you don't get people's true like 360 story, more like just the good stuff they want to show you. And so people that are in a bad place, and they'll think, well, why can't I do that? Why can't I travel? Why can't I look that way? Instead of just being happy with who they are, but they're really basing that off a facade. And covert depression happens that way too. So I would hope that it's a lot of resources, even more than what I'm doing, to help with mental health at a time like this. So I think that people should definitely research what is available out there for that.
And if someone is reading your book, is it kind of like they're going to get this motivational idea we just discussed? Do you feel like that after reading it? Or what happened to without giving us the ending, what happened to the protagonist? What's the takeaway from for any reader who's interested into your book?
So there is a twist at the end that I don't want to give away, but I will say that within the book, you do see her grow in both characters. So the character that she goes back to in the 1800s is named Aria. So you actually see, it starts when she's smaller, like around 12, 13. So you actually see her progress in both worlds. And I feel like you see her build confidence. You see her at her lowest. You can be inspired from things that she had to conquer. In present day, she actually goes through a mass shooting at her job. And all of these things that would really be triggers to people, even, it's relatable because it can be a trigger because it's things that are occurring in present day, but then also in reviewing slavery and what they had to go through, and seeing her really find true purpose, because at the end of the book, she really wants to stay in the 1800s because she feels like she is valued there. She does have a purpose. She finds love. She finds basically a reason to live, more so than in present day. So I feel like the biggest thing
why is that? Why is that, without giving anything away? Why is that? Why is she feeling more into 1800 than now?
Well, in our present day, what you would call present day and not the past, she experiences a lot of abuse. Some of her family members go to jail. I don't want to give away, you know, the plot. So I'm going to try to be as generic as possible. But she basically has a lot of hardships here, and she feels like she doesn't have any support in present day. So she dates people in present day, but they're not really, she doesn't feel like she's really vital to their life. Like it wouldn't matter if she was there or not. But vice versa, in the past, she actually sits down with people and plans different things. She plans against, I talk about propaganda for pushing slavery, because on the political side, back in the 1800s, some people in power were against, not so much against it, but they knew it was wrong, and they talked about it like, you know, maybe we shouldn't really be exposing people to this kind of treatment. But then they saw how much money it was making in certain industries, and so propaganda machines like newspapers and different media they had back then were pushing that. So in the past, she rallies against that. She tries to meet with certain people. She tries to do it the political way. She tries to do it the rebel way, basically to help prevent what she can see is going to happen, which is, you know, slavery lasting basically for years. So she's there trying to fight to basically prevent people from dying, that she knows, without giving away the plot. So she finds more purpose there. She finds more to do there. She feels valued there. She feels like her opinions are valued. And like I said, she finds love, and she feels a strong connection to that person. So those are basically the reasons why she finds more purpose there than in present day.
Sounds really interesting. I would like to read it. And what's your strategy? Like you are going to launch your book soon. It's already in pre-order. It's your second book. So what's your best strategy based on what you learned from your first book launch?
So my first book launch, I sold around 100 copies, 75 to 100. And that's because I have a really good, strong foundational support. My mother, grandmother, and my sister and brother, and the rest of our family, they're very, very supportive in everything we do. So they kind of rallied around that project and sharing it on social media. Social media was a big driver for that with the first book. But I feel like I wanted to reach a broader audience, a different type audience, you know, people that I don't really know, or that aren't a friend of a friend, because I feel like it's something that can really empower people. So with this, I did a 3-phase, basically strategic plan for communications. The first phase, and it's been kind of limited with the coronavirus, because I plan to do a book launch, and I was looking at a few things for that, and I still do plan to do it, but it's just in the third phase now. So the first phase was a lot of pre-communication. I actually started what I would call a program, but my makeshift program of Autoscopy influencers. So I picked 10 different people from different industries, and I reached out to them with a very detailed letter of what I would like for them to do, because I value their opinion. I think that they're making great moves in the community, and a lot of those people accepted. So I have people from media. I have a couple of reporters, people from media, people from tech industries, spiritual leaders, musicians. So I try to get somebody from each like integral industry. And basically I ask them to share the book with their audiences. Like if they have any events, you know, when the coronavirus isn't limiting us, to take the book there. I'm going to send them a free copy of the book. I have their mailing address and everything. So I'm already prepared for that. And for them to share it on social media, of course, and then to actually write reviews. That's a big thing on Barnes and Noble, and really anywhere else that you can write a review. I encourage that. So that's part of the first phase. And then I did some YouTube. I started a new business YouTube that I'm trying to really pump up and get off the ground and get subscribers, where I do a mix of inspirational content and then also connecting that back to the book. So everything that I talk about is a theme from the book. Like I'm going to talk about covert depression, like I was mentioning. Well, that's something that Leilani was actually going through before she tried to commit suicide in the book. So I can that way, so that way I can inspire people and talk about the book at the same time. And then the second phase will be a newsletter that I'm creating. I sent out press releases. I'll probably do a couple of more to just local media and some national media. And then, so things like that as far as the media is really the second phase. And then the third phase would be the in-person events, reaching out to some book events that I can showcase my book at. I know at libraries. Hopefully I can speak to some of the local pastors and share the book with them since it has the historical element in it. And just a lot of more face-to-face communication about the book. So those are the three phases that I have right now as far as communication strategies.
That's awesome. And so the first one you said it was just limited. It was more like a friend of a friend who knows a friend. Mm-hmm. This time you want to reach more, which is great. And I like this ambition. And it's great. It's really rare to see a woman fighting that fight and not giving up and having such a strategy. If you were able today to talk to yourself, like before you launch your first book, what would you tell yourself? What would you advise yourself before you launch your first book? Knowing what you know.
I would say get as much outside input as you can. And I know that a lot of authors starting off don't have a lot of funds to go the publisher route. But if you go the publisher route, quote unquote, at least get someone to proofread your novel, definitely. Prior to this, with the first book, I got people to proofread it, but they weren't really professional proofreaders per se. And then as far as like the actual editing of the book, so the first book, the cover, I do what I would call amateur photography of landscapes and nature, things like that. It's something that I just like to do as a hobby. And so one of the pictures I've taken of the lake is actually the cover for that book. And I was really proud of that. However, I think that maybe more time should have been spent on the cover, which is why I'm really happy about the collaboration with this cover with my husband, being an oil painting artist, completing that. So we're both very excited about that. So I think that as far as like the editing and the formatting, just paying more attention to that. That would be the advice to myself, because the first book was actually, it was on Amazon. And another thing about Amazon, me and Amazon, one thing that I didn't particularly like is that Amazon can change your pricing. I don't know if people realize that in the beginning, but that's something I would definitely tell myself. So like say my book was $15, like one day I could go on there and Amazon would have it selling for like $5 or something. I may be exaggerating the price. It may not be as low as $5, but it was low. And I wrote them about it and they would say, well, you're still getting the same profits. It's just kind of like a deal that we're making. But I feel like it kind of cheapened the book by lowering the price like that without my knowledge. That was one thing with Amazon. And then another thing was I got on there one day and you know how third parties can sell different products. It'll be basically a product, but a third party will be selling it. So a third party was selling my book. And I was thinking, okay, so, are they making profits from this? And so I reached out to Amazon and Amazon told me to reach out to the third party. I reached out to them and they were actually great. I don't remember like who it was or anything, but they took it down. They were actually surprised that it was up. I don't know if somebody on their team I don't know what about, but they took it down immediately. So it was no fight or anything. But I just thought it was weird that it occurred anyway, that was possible with a book.
But just a quick question, were they selling it cheaper or higher price?
They were selling it cheaper. So if my book was $15, like I would get on there some days and it would be 10, where it would be 5, like it would say it, it would be publicizing it as that. And when I asked them about it, they were saying, well, technically they're marketing it cheaper, but I would still make the same profits if that makes sense. So I would still make profits as if it was $15, but they're only charging like $5 on Amazon.
Yeah, but that's misleading for your audience because some would buy it 15, some would buy it 5. It's kind of like it's a scam. So I understand why. Yeah, and you are lucky you were able to fix it that fast. So besides the price issue you had, anything else you would tell yourself from the book one, from the launch?
I guess I kind of learned to have a bit tougher skin with that book because it was my first book and I was really excited because like I said, since I was little, this isn't like a new thing that I picked up. Like, I was little walking around the house saying, I'm going to publish a book. Like, I would get on PowerPoint on the older computers when I was younger, and I would make stories. And at the time, I was really making like a picture book, but at the time, I didn't really realize that. But I would take the clip art that you can make in PowerPoint, and I create stories to it. So I was super excited. I feel like overexcited about the first book and just putting it out. And maybe I put it out with a little haste, more haste than I would have with this book. Autoscopy. It took me 2 years to complete it not because I was stopping and starting so much, but it's just new ideas that kept flooding into my head. I get these ideas of, okay, I want it to go this way, as opposed to how I wanted it to end before. And I would have discussions with my husband all the time about the book, and we would just kind of brainstorm on different things. And well, this would be cool, this would be cool, and everything.
He should co-sign the book, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would just say maybe take more time, I guess I should say, and not just be so excited to put it out there.
Okay, so take time, make sure you have a great cover, double check the price on Amazon, like you said, make sure nobody's selling it at a cheaper price. Anything else?
I think that would be it. And I guess like the marketing strategy, it could have been a bit more expansive. I think I settled on, the buzz that I was getting from people, friends of friends or people in the community or, local businesses. I think I settled on that instead of trying to expand my audience more. So that's another thing.
And are you going to make any lecture on your YouTube channel where you're going to read some part of your books or something like that, so the audience know they could find you on YouTube? Is there something you're going to do for your launch strategy?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to read some parts similar to the part that I read you guys. It may be another part like slightly different, but there are various parts that I want to cover in the book. Another big part in the book that I may expand on. So I wanted to dive deep into like relationships back in slavery and the questions that I would be wondering if I were a slave back then. I know that people were still getting married, but I guess I've never heard a detailed conversation about the worrisome part of that. Like, I mean, you're marrying somebody that you may not see tomorrow, or that something detrimental may happen to, or they may be sold, so they really in the book have those intentional authentic conversations about, I'm scared to do this. Like, I'm scared to get married. I'm scared that you won't be here tomorrow. And then you have the other person saying, well, we got to live for today. So, and it goes back and forth. And so the expansion of love and how they come to be is an excerpt I also want to read. And I probably will be reading that soon, probably around the launching of the book. I'll do something like that.
Awesome. Feel free to contact me if you want to read it for us.
Okay. Okay, sure.
We're more than happy to welcome you again.
Thank you.
And so we talk about back and forth 1800s and now. We know now we have COVID-19 we have to face. In your story, is there something like that, a disease or something that happened in 1800 or in the present?
So it's not a disease. That's one thing that I didn't tackle. I started writing this around the time that the mass shootings were really prevalent here. It was almost like every week I would get on Twitter and I would see something trending about a mass shooting. So that's in there. That's a topic that's in there. It's something that she goes through. Is actually associated with workplace violence with the place that she's in present day where she's working. She's at university in present day. And so that's a situation, and people are hurt, and people do succumb to their injuries from that. So that's more along the lines of something that's big that happens today that's connected to the book. I don't have anything in there about pandemic. Yeah.
Okay. But still, the mass shooting is kind of like a trauma you have. It's a common PTSD you come out from. So without giving us anything away, how did you tackle that part?
And this is a thing that I have to do. I don't know if other authors do it as well, but in order to really get in character and have that character development, I have to like physically meditate and place myself in the character And so I'm actually imagining being in a place where there is a mass shooting. And it's actually kind of ironic because I used to work at a bank, and I had a dream one random night, that it was a mass shooting during when it was so many mass shootings going on. And I saw the shooters, I ran, I tried to hide in the bathroom, and they ended up coming in there and basically murdering me. Which is very, very, very depressing dream to wake up from, because I can't really tell you can't always tell when your dreams are real or fake. So I'm thinking, this is me. I'm not dreaming like I'm dying. And so that experience, that's the closest that I've had to it. And I really wanted to get that across and tackle it that way. So hopefully it's really authentic in the book, as far as what people are thinking, what her coworkers are saying to her as it's going on. She was actually in that time, in present day, she was having a relationship with her boss, which is other crazy things that go on involving their relationship. But he tried to protect her during the whole mass shooting thing, and so something comes out of that, and so I wanted you to be able to read the book and feel the fear in people, so you feel like you are there in that present moment, and you're hiding behind that desk, and you have that fight or flight. And that's basically how I tackled it, by becoming the character as I'm writing.
That's awesome, because you have this authentic story, something you lived, and you know exactly how you felt, and sharing it will give it a plus. I see. It's amazing. You did a good job, and I wish you all the best in all your endeavors. It's awesome what you've done so far.
Thank you so much.
And I like your strategy, and I hope authors watching today could take away some great strategies, and how you were able to share with us your first book, how you manage it, and how you are able to manage this new phase, even if COVID-19 kind of gonna stuck a little bit your phase from phase 1 to phase 3, but still you could still have a one-on-one later on, where people could meet you and have a conversation. And also you have your YouTube channel where people could reach out to you or listen to what you have to say about the book and everything related to it, which is a great job. I think you are doing really great.
Thank you.
So anything you would like to add that we haven't tackled so far about the book?
I would just encourage people to, give the book a chance. Like I said, it's on pre-order at Barnes and Noble, and try to take something away from it that pertains to your life. Like, as far as, I know I keep mentioning purpose, but that's like a really big, if I could delve it down to a word that's a theme, it's that. Because if I could be an inspiration to anybody, back in 2018, I was looking for another job. And so I was traveling, like, I stay in Alabama, but I was going to Georgia. I was going to, I was interviewing with people in Texas for social media jobs. Like, I was everywhere, and really driving to Georgia like every other weekend for interviews. And I remember one particular interview where it was like for like a small PR firm, and it was a group interview, and I, in my opinion, I did really well in the interview, so I was really confident about it. And I'm leaving, I sent an email back saying, thank you for allowing me to come. It was a good experience to interview, just to follow up with them. And like immediately the lady was like, we're not moving forward. And it wouldn't be a big deal if you hadn't been looking, searching for a job and going on all these interviews. And when you get to a point where something just like breaks you because you're so tired and you want to give up, I would encourage people, and I hope this book encourages people with the trials that they see the characters go through and overcome, to, know that as long as you stay laser focused on why you're here and what you're supposed to be doing, everything else will fall into place. Because it's jobs that I see now, like with the coronavirus and things like that, they're not even open anymore, like jobs I was trying to get. And the job that I have now, in conjunction with being an author, like I said, I work at a university. They've been very great as far as management, as far as keeping us safe, letting us work from home. And it's just the perfect position. And if I had taken those other positions, when it wasn't the right time and things that weren't really my purpose, then who knows where I would go. So I would just tell people just to continue on their path, take the road less taken, like in the Robert Frost poem. we had to learn. I think the last line of that poem, I love Robert Frost. The last line of that poem is, "I took the road less traveled by," and that has made all the difference. And I think that that's really key in life, and that's something that I want to get across in this book. So hopefully you guys will check out Autoscopy.
So where do you see us in Christmas 2020?
I always take the optimistic road because you just hear so much negative, which some negative is necessary because you have to know what's going on in the news and you have to know symptoms of things and everything like that. But I would take the optimistic road and say, my husband and I are actually searching for our first home. So, you know, graduating, I call it, from renting to owning. And we're trying to do that.
That's a beautiful way of saying it, graduating.
Yeah. So we're trying to do that this year, with December being when we're actually trying to move. So hopefully Christmas will be a new home that we can have our family and friends over, maybe have a housewarming, have Christmas, and hopefully coronavirus will, I know people are suffering. I know that suffering isn't going to go away even when coronavirus goes away because of the unemployment numbers and the deaths. But I would just hope that people would stay encouraged. If you are into prayer or spiritual, to meditate and keep yourself healthy mentally and physically. And hopefully Christmas 2020 will be better than Christmas 2019, you know. Optimistic.
Let's hope that. Yeah, I think it's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
You're optimistic. And I like the way you said you're going to graduate, like you're going to have a commencement, and that's great. That's a beautiful journey, and I wish you all the best for that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being here, and I wish you all the best with your book.
Thank you so much.
Like I said, I'm going to send you an invitation. I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, posting under this video the link to your pre-order book. And also once it's going to be live, the real order, I don't know if it's going to be the same link, just in case there's a difference. If you don't mind posting the link now, and once it's live also. I'm going to also send you under this video the link to this group I told you about, 6,000 authors and readers, where you could join and also advertise once it's live.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. It was Ashley. And if you like what you heard, just go forward. Get your book on Barnes & Noble. Is Barnes & Amazon, I think? In pre-order. Yeah, so you have those two options where you could have the pre-order. Otherwise, it's going to be available on the 21st or 25th. I don't know. 22nd, sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. So on the 22nd, it's going to be available. You're going to get your copy, and it's going to be a big thing. She's doing 3 phases, so you could find her also on her YouTube. What's your YouTube channel?
It's Ashley Ann Media Show.
Okay, so you could find her there, and you could also post your link below, where it's going to be easier if you don't really get how to write it or the spelling or anything. It's easier to find. And thank you for watching. It was nice speaking. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.